Hi, everyone. Welcome to this conclusion of the podcast, Reality and Revelation. Before I get started, I'd like to reiterate whatever we talk about in the episodes past episode 3 is subjective, and it depends on the successful completion of this experiment on neutron decay that I talked about in episode 2. Because I want us to focus on moving the needle from a particle-based reality to a wave-based reality, and focus everyone's attention on doing an experiment to prove what type of reality we live in before we talk about some of these other um, topics that I hope have been enlightening to you, that if we do live in a wave-based reality, you could reconcile the beliefs of theologians with the beliefs of scientists. You could explain anomalies such as the supernatural events in the Bible, which are the same things as the paranormal events or abilities that people talk about today. They're spiritual abilities of spiritual beings, eternal spiritual beings who use those abilities to travel, communicate, and manipulate energy. I also want to show you a progression chart, and this uh, is how you could look at all the different people on the planet. They're all in different stages of a spiritual evolution walk. And we talked about spiritual evolution in chapter 8. We're using evolution, a long-term objective of how to look towards something bigger than yourself, greater than yourself, look toward unchanging scripture that teaches you or can teach you how to live your life, how to avoid mistakes, how to move beyond an emotionally based life to be more rationally based, to be more thinking instead of responding and reacting. And then as you grow in this continuum of your spiritual walk, you could say grow in your spiritual evolution from being concerned primarily by emotions to being concerned about your ego. We're actually going to move to a point to where we'll have greater spiritual abilities, we'll have greater paranormal abilities, and we'll have to learn how to control our thoughts. But you can see this in the Bible, the Hebrew and Greek Bible, or the Old and New Testaments, if you wanted to call it either one. It's the Judeo-Christian Bible. But you go from this lower level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the physiological and the safety needs, by creating society and civilization and teaching people how to live together in community in the Hebrew Bible with a set of laws and a response for different things that people can do to each other to teach them how to live in peace. But it's more, a carrot and a stick type of arrangement, is that you do this and this is what happens. But as you focus more internally on yourself and move from a peaceful society toward working on your inner self, you learn more about loving other people. You learn more about being a peacemaker, about mourning, and sharing your love with other people, and learning how to love all different types of people, and to turn the other cheek, as is said in Matthew, where Jesus was telling people, if someone strikes you on the face, don't hit them back, because you'll just harden their heart. They're showing where they are on their spiritual journey. So turn the other cheek and just realize that they're responding to you um, based on where they are, and it's not going to help you any at all to harm them and harden their heart and make it harder for them to move forward on their spiritual journey. But you can look toward another verse in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, Isaiah chapter 11, verses 6 through 9. And this is called the Mountain of God. And it's where everyone has a knowledge of this higher level existence. And everyone practices self-governance, and no one harms anyone. But that's going to be the goal and the objective as people are moving from controlling their emotions to controlling their egos to controlling their thoughts. And they'll move from using world religions or unchanging scripture to learning morals, virtues, and ethics, to having spiritual experiences And this is something I also say in my book on spiritual development, is you get an intellectual understanding of life and how to live. But you have to reconcile that at some point with your life experiences. And as you have these paranormal experiences, see other people who have paranormal abilities, you have to reconcile what you understand intellectually with what you see in your life or in the lives of others. And I think that's going to be the next evolution, physical evolution for humanity, is this increase in paranormal or spiritual abilities, and then people having to learn how to live with those, and how to live with each other and having those abilities too. And if you think about it, those abilities can harm other people if you would believe that those are actually real. Those abilities can harm other people, and you need to move from an emotionally based life and an ego-based life to be one of more rationally based morals, virtues, and ethics before you would have the ability to be able to control those paranormal abilities and what they could do to other people. So we actually have to move up through this ladder in order to be capable or to be able to handle these things that could be coming. And I think they are coming. And that's going to be the next physical evolution of humanity. Let's look at some books before we leave. And this will talk about spiritual development. It'll also talk more about the phenomenological aspect of wave-based reality and people's experiences in non-physical dimensions, in life between lives, and in non-physical dimensions, and then traveling out of body. And also getting a broader perspective on spiritual development that encompasses not only our life on Earth, but lives on planets throughout the solar system. So let me explain. First, the phenomenological books on out-of-body exploration, life in non-physical dimensions. So look at these books here that form an L. I'll start with Dr. Michael Newton's book, Destiny of Souls. He's a psychiatrist, psychologist, and he does or did past life regressions. I believe he recently passed. But this is his the book that I like the best. I think he wrote 3 or 4 books. Destiny of Souls is a number of case studies where people were moved from a prior life into their life between their lives, and he talked about what that life between their lives was like. Then these next 2 books, Multidimensional Man and Adventures in the Afterlife. This is, the first one is by Jürgen Ziewe in Europe and Bill Bullman in the United States. They both have written multiple books as well on their life of out-of-body experiences and moving into the non-physical dimensions. So they treat it in different ways, and they wrote it a number of years ago in a way to where it is not exactly factual. They wanted to have some, if you wanted to call it plausible deniability, if someone confronted them on things, but these are actually their experiences in non-physical dimensions. So very worthwhile reading, and it'll give you background too on that as well. These last 3 books are by Robert Monroe, and he was the one who did more than many other people to popularize the idea of out-of-body experiences. He wrote 3 books. The first one in the 1970s, Journeys Out of the Body, which talks basically about his initial experiences with out-of-body experiences. The second book, Far Journeys, is where he went into the astral dimension, into one of the lower non-physical dimensions. And then in Ultimate Journey, he actually went up to a very high dimension, if we would call it high for on Earth. He went up to the causal dimension, and I did an analysis of one of the chapters where he talked about his ultimate journey. He went out of body, went through the etheric, went through the astral, and then was able to bypass the mental dimension to go into the causal. And it's a very interesting read, but you may not understand what he was doing if you didn't have access to or knowledge of that infrastructure chart that I showed you a few episodes back that showed all the different layers of the non-physical dimensions. If you understand those non-physical dimensions, you can understand what he's saying when he talks about them in his book. So let's move into these 4 books in the middle. And I'll say, start with The Science of Spirituality by Lee Blandon and move counterclockwise up to The Solar System by Arthur E. Powell. Lee Blandon is in Europe. He wrote a very accessible book on spirituality, and he talks about a lot of the work of Henry Lawrence, who wrote these 2 books, The Knowledge of Reality and The Philosopher's Stone, which is about spiritual development and spiritual evolution over thousands of years. Lee was able to put that in a more layman's terms in the reading. So start with his book first. The last book to read would be The Solar System, again by Arthur Powell, the person who wrote the 4 books on the different non-physical bodies. He wrote a book on how every planet in the solar system is used for the process of spiritual development, and how our time on Earth is just one time of many on a number of different planets as we go through the process of evolving into fully a spiritual being, or you could say a being of light. I know some people have said that, but that just gives you an idea of where we could be heading. So these are a number of books. Let me also give you, I just saw this, the web address for lawrencepublishing.com. Henry Lawrence's books aren't available in the U.S. They were written in Swedish originally, and they are for sale on lawrence.com. And you have to read how to, order the books. But basically, they want cash, so you have to send them cash in the mail and wait about a month, and it'll come in the mail from International Mail. But they're very worth getting. It's very hard to find here in the U.S., but they have a lot of great information in them from a spiritual evolution perspective. So just to wrap things up, going back to the other episodes that we've talked about, the differences between what theologians and apologists believe and what skeptics, atheists, scientists, philosophers believe can be reconciled by looking at the worldview that they both have, and by considering the fact that their worldview, your worldview, my worldview could be different from what we believe, and it could be fully wave-based, and our existence here would just be a special case of a standing wave for our physical existence here. But it's just like changing the channels on a radio or a TV or some other frequency-based device, is that you can change the frequency and move from one reality to another. And that's the whole idea behind a wave-based reality. But if you can realize that, then you can explain paranormal abilities. You can explain the supernatural events in the Bible, because they're all spiritual abilities that different beings have. You can see how we could be eternal beings, how we could exist in a higher level dimension and move down through lower dimensions into the physical dimension so that we could live a life that would give us experiences that we could take back to mature our own spirituality. That's the whole idea behind the podcast, Reality and Revelation, and I appreciate you hanging in there with me for these 10 sessions. I hope you have happy holidays, and I hope you have some questions that you'll leave me in the comments and that we can continue this conversation. Take care, and thank you.